Question 6, could feral horses benefit the environment? Now, I want to use this Australian iconic species, the Corroboree frog, to talk about this question. So Foster and Shield did this study of Corroboree frogs. So this picture shows the Corroboree frog breeding habitat. They breed in the moss and grass around these tiny little pools. And the females lay about 25 eggs. You can see these enormous eggs, and here's a Corroboree frog standing in its mossy nest. And if they dry out, then basically their reproduction fails. And that's not good for a frog that's already critically endangered. Now, the reason it's critically endangered is because of the chytrid fungus. So there's a disease that's been wiping it out. And to try to, and there's a lot of effort going into trying to keep these little populations going in the wild. And the absolute last thing we need is extra pressure from feral horses who could be destroying this sort of habitat. So this is one of the experimental studies that shows the consequences of having horses in the environment. So you can see we've got so he's got a fenced area. Horses can't get in here. Horses are out here. So it's replicated. So he had 8 exclosures. They were in place for 4 years. It measures the breeding habitat inside and outside the fence, but he also measured it before and after the fencing. So we're pretty sure the effect that they're measuring is due to the fencing. And he also had 3 control sites in areas where there were no fences and no horses. So it's really quite a thorough experimental study. Now, the important thing the important point that I want to make is that the experiment has the potential to find that horses benefit frog habitat. So, you know, you set out with the hypothesis that that feral horses could damage the breeding habitat. You put in the experiment to test it, and it could come out either way. Ben might have found that frogs were actually doing really well outside the fence. They prefer it because it's, for whatever reason, it's more open, it's sunny, it's got these pugging holes that they might use. Okay, so that's a possibility. The actual result was that the breeding habitat is compromised outside the fence when the horses are present, and Ben also noted that there are no deer or pigs in this area. So this is what happens to the breeding habitat. And think about that little frog standing on its egg clutch that I showed you before. They just can't survive when their breeding habitat is treated in this way. So coming back to this question, could feral horses benefit the environment? Well, you could argue that feral horses benefit the environment if you focus on the things that we don't care about, and if you ignore the things that we do care about. So, for example, you could focus on increased nutrient cycling due to dung out here where the horses are. And you could focus on the increase in plant diversity because probably some native and exotic weeds invade here, and you might have more plant species out here than in here. But you would have to ignore the fact that there's a critically endangered species having its conservation program completely crushed by the feral horses. It doesn't make sense, and that's about as charitable as I can be to people who raise this issue that feral horses could be beneficial to the environment.